What happens when a single act of frustration spirals into a neighborhood war, tearing apart friendships, families, and dreams? In the quiet suburb of Willow Creek, where manicured lawns and friendly waves define the rhythm of life, one woman's rage would unravel it all. This is the story of Karen Mitchell, a woman who thought she was protecting her peace but ended up shattering a community and her own life. It was a sweltering July afternoon, the kind where the air shimmered with heat and tempers flared just as easily. Karen, a 42-year-old divorcee with a sharp tongue and an even sharper sense of entitlement, lived in a tidy two-story house on Maple Drive. Her home was her fortress, a sanctuary of order in a world she often found chaotic. But the constant thump-thump of the neighborhood basketball hoop across the street had become her personal torment. The hoop, mounted on a sturdy pole in the cul-de-sac, was the heart of Willow Creek's youth. Kids gathered daily, their laughter and shouts filling the air as they played pickup games under the summer sun. Karen hated it. The noise grated on her nerves, disrupting her meticulously planned days. She'd complained to the homeowners association, sent passive-aggressive notes to neighbors, and even called the police once, claiming disturbance of the peace. Nothing worked. The kids kept playing, the ball kept bouncing, and Karen's resentment grew like a weed. One fateful evening, after a particularly exhausting day at her accounting job, Karen snapped. She stormed out of her house, her face flushed with fury, and grabbed a crowbar from her garage. The kids, a mix of teens and tweens, froze as she marched toward the hoop. "Enough is enough," she shouted, her voice echoing through the cul-de-sac. With a wild swing, she struck the pole, denting it. Another swing, and the hoop itself groaned, bending under the force. The kids scattered, some filming on their phones, others calling for their parents. By the time Karen stopped, panting and triumphant, the hoop was a mangled wreck, and the neighborhood was in shock. Word spread like wildfire. The next morning, Karen woke to find her mailbox stuffed with angry letters and her front yard littered with basketballs, a silent protest from the community. She dismissed it all with a scoff, convinced she'd done the right thing. But she hadn't counted on Malik, a 16-year-old star player on the high school basketball team, whose dreams hinged on that hoop. Malik Washington was no ordinary kid. Raised by his single mother, Tanya, in a modest house 2 streets over, he'd found solace in basketball. The cul-de-sac hoop was his training ground, where he practiced relentlessly, hoping to earn a college scholarship. Scouts had already noticed him, whispering about his potential to go pro. But now, with the hoop destroyed, Malik's routine was shattered. Tanya, a nurse who worked double shifts, couldn't afford a gym membership or private lessons. The hoop was their lifeline, and Karen had ripped it away. Tanya organized a neighborhood meeting, her voice trembling with anger as she spoke. That hoop wasn't just metal and mesh. It was hope. It was a safe place for our kids. And she took it. The room buzzed with agreement, but Karen, who'd shown up to defend herself, was unrepentant. "I deserve peace in my own home," she snapped. Those kids were a nuisance. Her words only fueled the crowd's outrage. By the end of the night, the homeowners association voted to sue Karen for the cost of repairs and punitive damages, citing her act as vandalism and a violation of community bylaws. The lawsuit hit Karen like a freight train. The hoop, custom-built and installed years ago by a local craftsman, cost $20,000 to replace, but the association tacked on legal fees and damages for emotional distress to the community. The total? $140,000. Karen, already struggling after her divorce, was stunned. She hired a lawyer, but her defense was weak. Multiple kids had recorded her rampage, and the evidence was undeniable. The court date loomed, and Karen's life began to unravel. Sony.com. Enter Lila Gwynn, a quiet, unassuming widow who lived on the edge of Willow Creek. Lila, 65, was known for her garden, where she grew vibrant Karen flowers. Ironic, given the woman who'd soon come to dominate her thoughts. Lila had watched the hoop drama unfold from her porch, her sharp eyes missing nothing. She'd seen Karen's outburst, heard the neighborhood's whispers, and felt a pang of sympathy for the woman everyone now vilified. Lila had her own history of loss: a husband gone too soon, a son estranged after years of grief-fueled arguments. She knew what it was to feel alone, to lash out in pain. So, when Karen's court date arrived, Lila did something no one expected. She testified on her behalf. In a twist that left the courtroom buzzing, Lila argued that Karen's actions, while wrong, stemmed from untreated grief and stress from her divorce. "She's not a monster," Lila said softly, her voice steady but heavy with emotion. "She's a woman who broke under pressure." Lila's testimony didn't erase Karen's guilt, but it painted her as human, not a caricature. The judge, moved by Lila's words, reduced the punitive damages slightly, though the fine still stood at $140,000. The neighborhood was divided. Some softened toward Karen. Others felt betrayed by Lila's defense, accusing her of siding with a Karen over the kids. But Lila's intervention wasn't enough to save Karen. The fine was a financial death sentence. Her savings dwindled, and she was forced to sell her beloved house to cover the cost. The day she moved out, Malik stood across the street, watching silently. Their eyes met, and for a moment, Karen thought she saw a flicker of understanding in his gaze. She'd heard about his scholarship, how the community had rallied to build a new hoop in record time. Malik was back on track. But Karen? She was leaving Willow Creek, her reputation in tatters, her life uprooted. As she drove away, Karen passed Lila's house, where the Karen flowers bloomed in defiant beauty. She stopped, staring at them, and for the first time, she cried not for the money or the house, but for the woman she'd become. She'd wanted control, peace, but all she'd done was break something that mattered to others. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd been nicknamed Karen long before this, a label for her sharp edges and demands. Now it defined her ruin. In a final, bitter twist, Karen learned that the new hoop wasn't just a replacement. It was dedicated to Malik, a plaque bearing his name as a symbol of the community's resilience. Her act of destruction had only made them stronger. Karen moved to a small apartment in a neighboring town, where the silence she'd once craved now felt like a cage. She'd won her peace, but at a cost no one could have foreseen. Nd.